Hello, everybody. Welcome to One Thing More. This is Jamalyn and Williamson, and I'm being joined today by the Right Reverend David Williamson. Hello, David.
Hello. That's what Jamalyn calls me around the house, the Right Reverend.
I told Dave that we were going to do this like I was hosting my own show and he was being invited on the show. So, Pastor Dave, it is so good to have you here with us. Thank you for joining us.
Good to be with you.
What's your day been like? What's going on around the church this week?
We got VBS going on this week, which is very different this year with doing it virtually. You know, we miss having all the energy of the kids here and kind of seeing them, you know, all their excitement every day. But we've been doing it virtually, and so every morning we kind of film and send it out live stream, and it's been fun all the same to watch, to get messages from parents and kids that are doing the Matthew 25 challenge and learning about issues like hunger and clean water. And so it's been really exciting, but it's been a different VBS this year for sure.
It has been a little different, but it's been nice for us because both of our kids are involved. So
Yeah.
Margaret, our daughter, who's going to be a sophomore in high school, is been one of the hosts that's being videotaped. And then our son, Nathan, has joined the AV team. And so he's running one of the cameras. So I have loved that because they've gotten up early and they've gotten out of the house. It has been fantastic for them and for me. Has been nice.
I'm the one that drives them to the church early, and
Yes,
the stress ball about getting to the church early. That's one thing. I'm much more. Both of us, I think, are more ad lib, and so like, hey, we'll show up and we'll just off the cuff do this, and that is
yeah.
my daughter's personality.
No, it is not. So it's been a great week. Dave, how was your lunch? Who'd you have lunch with today?
I had lunch with my wife, Jamie,
Oh, that's right. How lucky you were.
and
We
we
had
talked
lunch.
all about One Thing More.
We did. All right. So a couple things I just want to point out to our viewers, those who are watching. Yes, Dave's clock is broken still behind his left shoulder. We tried to fix it. It's still not working. So it will be 2:11 through the whole time we are talking.
We're doing
And
a major campaign fundraising for a cause,
yes, and just so people know, we changed the battery and it didn't work. The other
kind of like a
thing,
Back to the Future type thing.
it's always 2:11. The other thing I want to point out is, yes, I am wearing an awesome retro Purdue jacket. It's nylon. It has buttons. Peggy, who is our, I don't know, office extraordinaire, just gave it to me. I'm very excited. Okay. Dave, we were talking about Matthew 25 Sunday.
Yeah.
It's fun for me to be listening to your sermons because I've been taking notes so I would know what to talk about. And
Especially when you are there, and like the story I told on Sunday was like you live side by side with me with that paint, with the oil-based paint and the gasoline. So
yes.
I don't know
So
how closely my memory matches up with yours, but
no, that's how I had forgotten. So what Dave's talking about, for those who haven't had a chance to listen to the sermon yet, when we moved to Haiti, one of the first sort of jobs we finally got to do was we helped paint the chairs at the school. And they're kind of like wooden chairs with wicker seats. And we painted them with paint that was cut with gasoline, and it's oil-based paint. Remember that because our clothes were completely destroyed. But there was a ginormous pile of chairs, and Dave and I are being very meticulous about it. There was this other guy who was just kind of slapping it on. And I remembered it that way. What you didn't tell was the extra story about how you shared a Coke
yeah,
with that guy.
let's
And
share that story.
I think the guy was Berto. I think it was the guy who cut the hair.
That'd be Berto. Yeah. I don't remember, honestly. So where the upshot of the story, just you should listen to the sermon, I guess, but was realizing that like I had to kind of have this mindset of I didn't know what child was going to sit in that chair, but it was Christ himself. And so I was going to paint it to the best of my ability. And then I realized this guy painting next to us who whose handiwork I was somewhat critical of, that's Christ himself too. So when they came around later in the day, and it was a hot August day, and they offered us drinks, ice cold Coca-Colas in a glass bottle, like that's what they have in Haiti, because they recycle the glass bottles. And so I'm drinking this Coke, and I'm looking over at Berto or whoever the Haitian person was who had nothing to drink. And well, he's Christ himself. He's thirsty. I'm going to offer him something to drink. So I did. What I didn't realize is that sharing a Coke with someone when my immune system was not caught up to uh, the bugs and parasites in Haiti, that wasn't a good idea. I got really sick for the next week or so. Um,
Really sick. And I still think it was heat exhaustion. I'm not sure it was from the Coke, but
no,
he got really
that's true.
sick. And, keep in mind, everybody, Dave and I have only been married 7 months. And prior to that, we'd only been dating about 15 months. So I'm with a guy that I still hardly know that I'm married to. The one thing I knew about Dave, though, was he never is sick, still to this day, hardly ever sick. And he was really sick. And I remember your heart was racing. I was really scared. And we had some antibiotic and some other things that we were able to get into, but we went to Jacques Mill where you saw the Cuban doctors.
Yeah. Do you,
And
do you remember your Eugenio experience?
well, that was the Eugenio experience. So Dave has like a stomach flu kind of situation too.
Yeah. And
And
and we ran out of water, like,
and
which happened at the house fairly regularly. And there's a spigot behind the house that you could go get water from. So you had to carry your bucket down, and you would use the bucket of water to flush the toilet or to do whatever. But
and
uh,
it was a 5-gallon bucket. And
yeah.
I'm a wimpy, no calluses on my hands American. And
And this is the first time
Dave,
we ever had to like go get water
it
from
was the first time, well, we hadn't
uh
been there very long, and it
no
was August, and it doesn't rain a whole lot in August. So I'm sure what happened was the house cistern was empty. So anyway, I take this 5-gallon bucket and go down about 20 steps and around a house, around to the back of this big house we were living in, and then down another little ramp, probably another 10 steps or so to where the water spigot is. And not obviously having never done this, I filled the bucket up all the way. Well, then I can't even hardly carry it. The water splashing, and Eugenio, who was a Cuban volunteer, he was a veterinarian. He lived right below us in this house where we lived with other volunteers. He saw me. I didn't speak Creole or Spanish really,
he didn't speak
and
English.
he didn't speak English. And he
Aside
just,
from yelling for Cokes, that was about the only
yeah,
I ever heard him
that was about it. And he
speak.
just put his hand up, like gave me a stop sign basically, and picked up the bucket, walked it all the way up to the room for me. And he did say something like familia or something. And that was enough just to help me understand that, we're a family here. And yeah, it was, um, I learned very quickly in that experience that we were going to have to learn to rely on the other people we lived with for sure. And I also realized if you ever can choose between electricity and running water, you always pick running water every day of the week. But I thought it was interesting when I think about the Eugenio because it reminds me of something um, that you said in your sermon. You said Jesus points us back to the ordinary. It's the everyday things we do that make the difference. And that wasn't a really ginormous thing that Eugenio did. I mean, he was a big, strong dude picking up a 5-gallon bucket and walking him up those stairs. It wasn't like it wiped him out for the day. It was just an ordinary thing. He saw I needed help. He did it. But it's been almost 20 years later, and we're still talking about the impact that had on us.
I think it was so profound because that was one of those moments where we realized it's not just about giving or serving, it's about receiving and allowing others to serve us and recognize. I mean, that was a lot of that first month in Fondois was because we did come in and we were kind of helpless, didn't know how to cook, didn't know how to wash clothes by hand, didn't, I mean, so there's a lot of, couldn't speak the language. And so we had to kind of take a humble posture and allow others to teach us and receive a lot. And in some ways, the more powerful experiences that we still talk about were the moments where people kind of put a hand up and said, "Stop, let us help you." You know, those
Which is,
moments made
so
us go along.
opposite of what we thought we'd be doing or even
Yeah.
what people thought. I mean, we thought I don't know really what we thought when we went down there. Um, but I certainly didn't think I was gonna be the one constantly being taken care of. Um, and it felt like that at different times that I was always depending on other people to help us. Even little things like Sine, who was kind of like a father figure to Dave and I in Fondois. He lived across the road from where we lived. Even just knowing that he always knew where we were. I mean, we didn't check in with him and tell him where we were going, but he always was keeping an eye on us to know where we were and what we were up to. And, I never in 1,000 years would have thought there would have been someone who was keeping tabs on us because they loved us and wanted to make sure we were safe. So, you know, I think it is interesting 'cause a lot of times we talk about Matthew 25 about what you're doing for others, like you said something about the kindness that you show is uncalculating. Is that right?
Yeah, that was the second point I made is that it wasn't calculated kindness. Like, it wasn't like they were doing it because they knew it was the king and they were trying to get in his favor or move up the social ladder. It was just kindness without, I mean, the sheep did it freely and the goats did not give it freely. The goats probably would have been kind if they saw what was in it for them, if it served their social advancement or some other cause. But
Yeah.
yeah, sheep.
But what I think is interesting about that is for for the two of us, there was so much kindness in our direction that was I mean, people constantly doing things for us and we thought we would need to pay them. And then finding out if we offered to pay them, that would be really offensive to them, that they just wanted to help us because that was their way of honoring our service to live there. So sometimes it's interesting when I was listening to your sermon, I didn't think about necessarily like, what do I need to be doing more of, but more thinking about all the ways I had been, received kindness during our time there for sure.
Yeah, our friend Lori, who went with me right after the earthquake, and that was a really bad time, and it was really. We flew into the Haiti maybe 6 weeks after the earthquake. Um, One of the first flights that you could get when they reopened the airport, and it was just, I mean, there people were devastated. And but I remember Lori, just her experience going to house. We would go and visit people and interview them and take some supplies that we had. And everywhere we went, people offered coconuts or mangoes or breadfruit or coffee or whatever they had. Um, and it was part of their dignity, like that they had something to share. But I remember Lori reflecting on that, just said, generosity has nothing to do with abundance. And that's always stayed with me, that generosity really isn't about how much you have. It's about how free you are to give. And which goes back to what we're talking about with Matthew 25. It's the things that Jesus talked about. They don't require a lot of resources. They just require kindness and generosity. So,
Yeah, and I think too, because of that experience of how we were treated during our time there, it reminds me, you also said Jesus challenges us to see others' needs as our own family, right? Am I saying that right?
yeah, well, to see others, not just to see their needs, but to see them as family, which is, you know, eh, which implies a relationship and a responsibility toward them. It's not just like, oh, poor people, but that's my brother, my sister, my
Yeah.
child, to see them in that way. It's not them, it's us, I think about the conversation we had right after church. Jamal and I, after church, stuck around and we're talking to people out in the lobby. And there's one family in our church who has moved to Zionsville from Nigeria. And we were talking to them, and they were just reflecting on the dad was saying to me, all those images in the picture there, I've lived in the video, which was people
from Guatemala.
Well, some of those images were from Africa too, but sleeping on floors and carrying buckets of water and all that. And I just remember him saying, that was my childhood.
Mm-hmm.
How he says, people don't understand, but that's how I lived. And for me, it changes it to think that we're not talking about them like people who are on the other side of the world all the time. I mean, that was a case where someone sitting in our congregation in our pew said, that was my experience. I know it was. And I guess that's part of what I was trying to say is with that line about, it's not just seeing people's needs, but it's understanding that it's us. We're all part of the same family, familia, Eugenio's word.
Familia. Well, I thought it was a great sermon. I thought these last couple have been great. And I'm excited for this Sunday. This Sunday, my brother's coming.
He is.
Yay.
Can I tell a joke that someone told me out in the lobby? I don't know if this is on brand or not, but.
Oh boy. Okay.
Well, part of the story I told was about them, painting, but that they thinned it out with gasoline and made it real thin and runny. And so this person comes into the lobby and tells me a story. He says a pastor wanted to paint the church. And so he went to the store and bought, big gallon of, or 5-gallon bucket of paint, white paint, started painting. And after he painted the first side of the church, realized I don't have enough paint. So he added some water and thinned it out to, see if he could stretch it. He painted the next side of the church and thought, I still don't have enough. So he thinned it a little more, did the third side, realized he needed a little bit more. So he thinned it and painted the last side. And then no sooner had he finished than a gigantic thunderstorm came along and rained, and it, washed all the paint away. And this pastor said, God, what am I supposed to do now? And he heard a voice from heaven that said, repaint and thin no more.
That's good. Okay.
So,
well, I think that's a good one to end on, honey. That was very nice.
So we'll end with that joke.
And your clock says that it's 2:11, so that tells me it's time for us to stop. But
I do hope everyone will be here Sunday, because Josh is an amazing preacher. When Jamalyn,
I was gonna say, I'll tell him that story.
First time Jamalyn heard me preach, and we'd been dating like a week or something, like not very long. She came to me, and
we weren't even dating yet. I came to see if you were a good preacher, so I could decide if you were worthy of me dating.
No, we went on our first date Tuesday. This is Sunday. Yes, it was like 5 days after we even got on our first date. And anyways, but she said to me, Dave, that was really good. You're the second best preacher after my brother.
Right.
But I didn't understand, honestly, how high a compliment that was until I heard Josh preach.
I know.
And
of course, I'm a little biased because I think he's great, but you're not too bad either.
Yeah. So I hope you'll join.
So Josh Pay's coming. Ooh, I'm excited.
And then Josh is actually going to do one thing more next week with Jamalyn. Josh now works for World Vision, and so he's going to spend some time with Jamalyn next week talking about World Vision and what
that one might have to be a 30-minute one.
Maybe.
Okay. So it's 2:11. We should go.
Okay.
Can't wait to see what you're going to make for dinner tonight,
honey. The time is just flown by. It feels like
I know.
Not a single minute has passed.
Thank you. That's so sweet of you. All right. Love you. Bye.
Bye. Love you. Bye.